In a world where more than 8 billion human lives move with restless motion, there are still houses standing quietly at the edge of the crowd. No neighbors, no easy roads leading to their doors. Nothing protects them except a few thin walls against the ocean, the rock, and the open wind. There is a house standing alone on an island in the middle of the sea. There is a house clinging to a rock in the middle of a river. There are places where a shelter is built on a cliff, where a single storm can cut off every way out. Is this absolute freedom or profound loneliness? Welcome to a journey through the most isolated houses on Earth. Limo is not only an offshore lighthouse, but a place where humans try to preserve a sign of life in a sea that can crush everything in an instant. The extremity of this place, music, was carved into history on December 21st, 1989, when photographer Jean Guicha flew past at the exact moment a monstrous storm was hammering the entire tower. At the moment, lighthouse keeper Theodore Malorn stepped out of the door. A gigantic wave almost as tall as a 10-story building surged in from behind and swallowed the whole lighthouse, leaving only about half a second between life and death. The lighthouse keepers had to avoid looking down at the waves for too long and always invent work to keep their minds occupied, because if the mind slips before reason does, this tower can turn into a deadly trap. Cliffside Capsule is recognized as the world's first cliff-hanging capsule accommodation, opening in the year 2013 and pioneering the global trend of sleeping suspended on vertical rock faces. To reach their sleeping pod, guests must climb a via ferrata system of steel rungs and cables drilled directly into the cliff, ascending for roughly 1.5 to 2 hours with no intermediate exit points. There is no elevator or staircase for departure, as the standard way to leave the site is by sliding down a network of 6 zipline routes that carry the body in controlled free fall across the canyon. Inside the glass capsule, the dry toilet is visually exposed, allowing an unobstructed view straight down hundreds of feet into the abyss during a basic human routine. Cliffside Capsule is among the rare places where extreme adventure travel and full comfort lodging are structurally fused, forcing survival instinct and luxury to coexist in a single suspended space. Bivico Buffer Diriro is often described as the loneliest house in the world. A title that reflects how the structure nearly disappears into a sheer Doomite's cliff, revealing only a small facade suspended in midair. The shelter is embedded inside a natural rock cavity, surrounded on all sides by vertical stone walls with no conventional walking path leading to it, making it resemble a hidden doorway carved into the mountain. After decades of abandonment and roof collapse caused by avalanches and alpine storms, the site was fully restored in 2022 by Italy's 6th Alpini Regiment as an emergency refuge for mountaineers. Inside, the space is extremely compact, with raw mountain rock forming the walls, fitted only with 12 simple wooden bunk beds and no electricity, running water or toilet facilities. Reaching the shelter requires advanced climbing skills, including navigating iron ladders bolted directly into vertical rock faces and narrow exposed ledges. Along the route, climbers must cross the 27-meter Cristalla suspension bridge hanging over a deep abyss, famously featured in the film Cliffhanger, turning access to this refuge into a genuine survival challenge. Observatory. Jungfrau stands on a narrow rock ridge at an elevation of 11,811 feet between two major snow-covered peaks in Switzerland. This structure is linked to Jungfrau Joch, home to the highest railway station in Europe and one of the continent's highest permanently staffed research facilities. The surrounding landscape is covered with snow throughout the year, making the site almost separated from the lower valleys below. To reach this place, visitors do not climb the mountain, but travel by a railway line that passes through the inside of the mountain. From the station inside the rock, a 354-foot elevator carries people to the observatory in about 25 seconds. Sphinx Observatory was completed in 1937 after construction work carried out among snow, avalanches, and harsh high mountain terrain. Nzula Zoo, located deep within Ghana's Amanzuri wetlands and surrounded by a maze of mangroves, is a community completely separated from land. where the entire village stands on wooden stilts, suspended above the murky waters of Lake Tadane. The entire village, from homes, schools, and churches to even bars, is built on sturdy wooden platforms and stilts rising from the water. Approximately 500 residents here live mainly by farming and fishing, with all daily activities from cooking to rituals taking place right on the lake. While the village has no main electricity supply, using only car batteries for basic devices and guest houses are very simple. To get here, you will experience a boat trip lasting 45 minutes to 1 hour, winding through narrow channels and lush green mangroves where every turn makes you feel as though you are entering a completely separate world. Mont Michel lies off the coast of Normandy in France and began construction in the 8th century when humans transformed a small granite island into a large monastic and fortress complex. The site is unique because tidal changes can turn the entire structure into a completely isolated island within just a few hours. Over time, Benedictine monks and builders expanded the complex with churches, monasteries, Gothic halls, and reinforced defensive structures. The surrounding walls, watchtowers, and drawbridges turned the island into a highly defensible fortress that never fell even during the 100 Red Years' War. Despite receiving millions of visitors each year, the number of permanent residents on the island today remains only around 30 to 40 people, including monks and a small civilian population. The Dina River House is often described as the loneliest house in the world, standing alone on the top of a narrow rock in the middle of the violent Drina River. Despite its fragile appearance, the small wooden structure has survived for decades against strong currents and frequent floods. It was not built by professional engineers or architects, but constructed in the year 1968 by a group of local youths who wanted a place to rest while swimming. To adapt to the powerful river flow, the house features open gaps beneath the floor, allowing floodwater to pass through instead of pushing against the entire structure. Although it is not an ancient monument, this persistence has turned the house into a modern cultural symbol that attracts thousands of visitors every year. Abuna Yamata-gu is a famous monolithic church in the Tigray region of Ethiopia, often considered one of the world's most inaccessible churches. This church sits at an elevation of over 8,460 feet above sea level. Carved directly into the sheer cliff face of the Geralta mountain range. There are no paths, no stairs. The only way to reach it is a free, deep, and perilous climb up the vertical rock face without safety ropes, harnesses, or any modern climbing equipment. Those who ascend must go barefoot, placing their toes into shallow, weathered grooves formed over centuries by those who came before. For generations, local priests have made this deadly journey daily, and even more astonishingly, mothers still climb the sheer cliff with their newborns strapped to their backs just so their children can be baptized. Casa do Penedo, located in the Windy Faith Mountains in northern Portugal, is a house hidden among 4 giant prehistoric boulders, looking as if it stepped out of the Stone Age. The house was built from 1972 to 1974 by an engineer from Gamarmang S. Originally created as a private family retreat. Despite being located near a wind farm, the house has no electricity at all, but it is still equipped with basic amenities such as a fireplace and an outdoor swimming pool carved directly from natural stone. To survive here, the owner had to install bulletproof windows and a heavy steel door, not only to withstand the harsh weather, but also to face the dangers from the isolated wilderness surrounding it. Kororovi tree houses are extreme tree dwellings in the forest of Papua, where people lift their entire way of life above the ground to survive at heights reaching about 164 feet. The Korowe people do not build on low branches, but lock their homes onto large tree trunks to music avoid floods, predators, malaria-carrying mosquitoes, and hostile groups. These multi-tenon houses are assembled with vines, forest rattan, and crushed bark without using nails, screws, or modern steel cables. Even though the entire house is made from flammable palm leaves and dry wood, they still build a clay stove music in the middle of the floor for cooking and warmth. The only way up is a single carved tree trunk with footholds just wide enough for half a foot with no handrail, no safety net, and a surface kept slippery by rainforest rain. Outsiders must travel by riverboat and then walk for days through humid forest where dangerous insects, unstable weather, and isolated terrain make very few people dare to go there. Paro Takchang, perched high above Bhutan's pine-filled misty valleys, appears more like a miracle than an architectural feat. Precariously situated 3,000 feet above the valley floor on a sheer granite cliff, it blurs the line between the sacred and the terrifying within the clouds. Built in the late 17th century around a series of meditation caves, the monastery clings to the mountainside with a tenacity that seems to defy all laws of physics. Just one glance over the edge of its whitewashed balconies is enough to reveal the dizzying abyss below, where there are no safety nets. The danger of Tiger's Nest lies not only in its height, but also in its fragile history, as fires have nearly turned the entire place into a matchbox suspended in mid-air. To live here is to accept the impermanence of human life, as even the journey to reach the entrance is an arduous 3-hour climb up steep, treacherous paths, exhausting even the most seasoned travelers. Pradama Castle in Slovenia is the largest cave castle in the world, constructed directly into the mouth of a limestone cave on a vertical cliff rising 403 feet. The entire rear structure of Pradama Castle relies on a single limestone rock mass with ceilings and pillars formed by natural stalactite formations. The cave system behind Pradama Castle extends for several miles, creating an underground tunnel network connected to the exterior of the cliff. This underground network was used to transport food and supplies during periods of siege. Modern access to Pradama Castle uses a drawbridge, while the original entrances were positioned higher on the cliff to restrict direct access. Large bat colonies inhabit the unrestored cave section within Pradama Castle as a stable long-term habitat, clinging defiantly to a sheer cliff at 900 meters high. Ostrog Monastery appears more music, like an impossible illusion suspended in the sky, than a structure built by humans. Right on the hard rocky balcony, a grapevine has lived and borne fruit for centuries despite having no soil to grow in, which locals believe is a miracle and visitors cannot explain. During World War II, a Nazi bomb hit the monastery, but strangely it did not explode and instead broke in half. So Ostrog Monastery remains intact to this day. The monks here did not build walls, but used the cave's rock face as the walls, painting directly onto the stone and creating narrow, deep spaces that make visitors feel like they are entering the heart of a mountain. The path leading up to Ostrog Monastery is steep with deep cliffs on both sides. Yet barefoot pilgrims still make the journey every year, creating a scene that many find hard to believe belongs to the 21st century. Deep within China's Gansu province, a colossal monolith rises alone amidst a sea of forests and mountains. This is Maijishan Mountain. Which looks as if it has just emerged from the earth to challenge all human limits. But the miracle, and simultaneously the horror, lies not in the mountain itself, but in what clings to its almost vertical surface. For centuries, ascetic monks and visionary artisans transformed this sheer cliff into their sanctuary. The caves and temples are connected by a network of narrow, dizzying, and terrifying wooden planks and staircases directly pinned to the outside of the cliff face, hundreds of feet in the air. If you had to live here for a full year to receive $1 million, would you dare make that trade, with every day being a confrontation with danger right beneath your feet? Rising from the mists of Guizhou province, Mount Fangying is crowned by temples that seem to balance on nothing but air. Two Buddhist temples sit impossibly perched on separate peaks of a needle-thin rock spire at over 2,500 meters altitude. They are connected only by a bridge that spans the gap between heaven and earth. built over 500 years ago, the temples were anchored directly into the living rock itself. For centuries, monks have lived and worshipped in these sky-high sanctuaries, hauling supplies up over 8,000 stone steps, chiseled by hand into the near vertical mountainside. Pilgrims ascend through clouds to reach temples where the air grows thin and every breath becomes a prayer. The mountain is so sacred and so treacherous that reaching the top remains an act of faith as much as endurance. In Iceland, the fishing town of Grindavik sits in the shadow of an active volcano where residents often watch the molten rock illuminating the horizon like a fiery reminder of their precarious existence. But that's not all. The town is also an earthquake hotspot, receiving on average 25,000 earthquakes per year. The earth beneath them is utterly unpredictable, but that shouldn't come as a surprise. They built their homes on solidified lava fields where molten rock once flowed freely. Residents live constantly on edge, knowing that at any moment rivers of molten lava could come pouring into their streets with nothing they can do to stop it. When the volcano decides to unleash its fury, entire neighborhoods must evacuate as the unstoppable flow consumes everything in its path. Adding to their concerns is the nearby Svatani geothermal power plant, which sits directly in the volcano's potential path of destruction. It's scary to even imagine the damage that could be done if the power plant got hit by flowing lava. This is life on the edge of creation itself. Halfway around the world, another community has also mastered the art of living on the edge. Perched on the edge of a 50-meter basalt cliff, the Spanish town of Castellfolli de la is literally only 2 houses wide at its narrowest point. The entire medieval settlement balances on a razor-thin ridge of volcanic rock with buildings squeezed so tightly together that neighbors can shake hands across the street. From below, the town appears carved directly from the cliff itself, which isn't far from the truth. Houses were built using the very basalt they stand on, with stone cut from the rock face and stacked back into place. Every step toward the town center brings you closer to the precipice where medieval walls serve a dual purpose: defense from enemies and prevention from tumbling into the abyss below. welcoming like towns where dying is literally illegal. In Svalbard's Longyear Bayan, bodies don't decompose in the permafrost. They remain perfectly preserved indefinitely, so death is literally illegal here. When people become seriously ill, they must travel to mainland Norway, not for treatment, but to ensure they don't die in a place where the earth refuses to reclaim them. Life operates by different rules when you're closer to the North Pole than to Norway. Here, everyone carries rifles, not for crime, but for polar bears. The sun vanishes for months, plunging the town into endless Arctic night. Then it returns for months of midnight sun, where 300 AM looks identical to 300 PM. Buried in Arctic ice, this town hides humanity's last insurance policy, the Global Seed Vault. Inside, over 1 million seeds are locked behind blast-proof doors kept frozen for centuries. Wheat, rice, corn, and crops from every corner of the earth. If disaster strikes and fields go barren, these seeds are kept to bring our food supply back to life. Bishop Rock is the kind of place that makes it difficult to believe humans still attempted to build an entire lighthouse in the middle of the ocean on a rock with barely enough space to stand. This rock lies in the Atlantic Ocean and is recognized by Guinness as the world's smallest island with a man-made structure, almost only large enough to support a granite tower rising 161 feet high. It took a full 7 years for determined workers to complete the current stone tower while holding onto the site in the middle of violent waves. Even after being constructed from enormous granite blocks, and later reinforced again, this place has never truly been peaceful. Lighthouse keepers said that whenever storms arrived, they could feel the entire tower trembling after each crushing odor from the sea. Thurangaviti is regarded as the most isolated lighthouse in the world, standing on top of a basalt pillar rising nearly 118 feet above the stormy Atlantic Ocean. Built in 1939, it was once reachable only by climbing the vertical rock face by hand, while powerful winds and crashing waves struck the base below. The site also serves as a refuge for puffins and other seabirds that nest within narrow rock crevices where wind speeds can surpass 125 miles per hour. The lighthouse itself is a reinforced concrete cube measuring around 13 feet on each side, engineered to survive extreme weather conditions. Yet some disappearances are far more mysterious than shifting tides. Deep within Guatemala's rainforest, the ancient Maya city of Tikal tells a story of greatness consumed by time. Massive limestone pyramids rise above the jungle canopy like ancient skyscrapers, their summits still reaching toward gods that no longer answer. At its peak, tens of thousands of people lived here, a thriving metropolitan center where many modern cities would struggle to endure. They constructed roads, palaces, and observatories capable of tracking celestial movements with astonishing precision. Then, sometime around 900 AD, they simply vanished. The jungle reclaimed everything. Vines wrapped around temples, roots fractured foundation, trees emerged through stone floor. For centuries, Tikal existed only as legend until explorers cut through the dense wilderness and uncovered a city that nature had almost completely erased. On Lake Titicaca in Peru, more than 3,800 meters above sea level, the Uros people have created floating islands from totora reeds that grow in the shallow waters. These remarkable islands, continuously rebuilt as the reeds naturally decompose, may be one of humanity's most ingenious answers to the challenge of territory. When the land is unavailable, create your own. So extraordinary are these reed-made homes that they have become one of South America's most popular tourist attractions, drawing visitors from across the globe to experience islands that truly float on the water. Yet others discovered freedom not by creating their own land, but by living without any permanent claim to it. On the Mongolian steppe, vast emptiness becomes a way of life. Here you can travel for days and see nothing but endless grasslands beneath an open sky. No roads, no nearby neighbors, only a horizon so wide it makes you feel both insignificant and completely free. Their homes move with the season. A single yurt containing everything a family needs to survive can be taken apart in less than an hour, loaded onto camels or the back of an aging truck, and rebuilt many miles away before sunset. Home is not a fixed place here. It is wherever the journey pauses. But this lifestyle is gradually disappearing. Winters are growing harsher, droughts more severe, and many nomads are leaving the steppe for crowded settlements on the outskirts of Ulaanbaatar. Even so, nearly a third of Mongolians continue to live this way, enduring minus 40 degrees Celsius winters in tents that move with the season, holding onto a sense of freedom even as it slowly fades. In Yemen's remote mountains, a village seems to challenge gravity itself. Haid al-Jazil clings to a towering boulder, its stone homes built directly into the ancient rock formation. Constructed over 500 years ago for protection against bandits and tribal conflicts, the village appears to grow from the mountain itself, with houses tucked into crevices and balanced on narrow ledges. Yet the true masters of the desert never relied on walls at all. In some of the world's harshest deserts, where extreme heat can be deadly and water may be days away, nomadic families have perfected survival in one of Earth's most unforgiving environments. They cross endless seas of sand without maps, GPS, or roads, guided only by knowledge passed through generations and by the stars that have led their ancestors for thousands of years. To those who understand it, every grain of sand holds a clue. Camels, often called the ships of the desert, provide nearly everything needed to survive: meat, milk, shelter, and fuel, while carrying entire communities across vast landscapes that could easily consume permanent settlements. Temperatures can shift from blistering daytime heat to freezing nighttime cold within hours. Sandstorms can transform daylight into darkness without warning. Water sources are often separated by days of travel. A single mistake in direction can be fatal. Yet entire families take down their camps and journey thousands of kilometers across this wilderness every few weeks, continuing a way of life shaped by endurance, knowledge, and movement. Yet in some places, the Earth's fury becomes little more than part of everyday life. On Tanna Island in Vanuatu, families wake each morning to the sound of the ground erupting beneath the sky. They live in the shadow of one of the world's most active volcanoes, a mountain that erupts dozens of times every day, like a giant alarm clock that never stops ringing. Here, volcanic eruptions are not viewed as disasters. They are simply part of an ordinary afternoon. The local people have learned to understand the volcano's behavior, recognizing which blasts signal real danger and which are merely the mountain releasing its energy. Every year, travelers spend thousands of dollars to witness a spectacle that many of these families barely notice anymore. A constant force of nature that has become the soundtrack of daily life. But Greece's coastline conceals its own architectural illusion. From the mainland, Monemvasia appears to be little more than a coastal village beside a massive rock. But sail around to the opposite side and an entire Byzantine town suddenly reveals itself. Stone homes cascading down steep cliffs, red-tiled roofs gripping slopes that descend dramatically into the sea. Its name means single entrance, a city that survived by remaining hidden in plain sight, deciding which face of itself the outside world would be allowed to see. For more than 1,000 years, this fortress mastered the ultimate game of concealment, invisible from the mainland, visible only to sailors bold enough to draw near.